Welcome to the fourth episode of Trust the Badge. In this episode, I interview Sergeant Jim Cannon, a school resource officer in Nassau County, Florida. We discuss the tragic event yesterday at Texas, the elementary school shooting, sadly. And we also discuss the disconnect between policing and the community. So, thank you for listening, and I hope we enjoy this episode.
My name is James Cannon. I have been a police officer for over 30 years, first with the U.S. Navy, then with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and now with the Nassau County School Board Police Department. When I first got involved with any kind of law enforcement, it was in the Navy, and I was aboard a ship, and I began helping as the master at arms, which is the Navy version of law enforcement on board a ship. And it grew from there. I went from helping out on the ship as a master at arms to going to the Navy Law Enforcement Academy and becoming a Navy police officer. And then while I was a Navy police officer, I went through the police academy in Jacksonville, Florida. And when I left the Navy, I became a police officer with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. It was kind of an accident because I met a friend of mine who I went to church with, said, "Hey, I'm going to go try out for the police academy. You want to come with me?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And I ended up going through the entire police academy, and he dropped out after 2 days.
That's actually an interesting story. So you start off in the military, and then as you were interested in becoming a police officer, you decided to become a citizen and also become a police officer here, correct?
Right. I had, it's thanks to my supervisors that I had that encouraged me to, they made my work schedules flexible enough that I could go attend the police academy at night. So I got up and came in early and was able to go to night school. And then also, as part of being hired by Jacksonville at that time, you had to have a 2-year college degree. So they gave me the flexibility to earn my college degree also while I was still in the Navy.
How is being a resource officer different from being on patrol and, as you mentioned, like a Navy police officer?
Well, I mean, the difference is I'm assigned to one area all the time. Um, my duties are the security of the school and making sure that, the kids are safe. With small kids here in the school, we're not worried about the teachers and the staff handle any discipline problems or any issues like that. My primary goal is security, and that would deal mostly with people that know the teachers and then the adults that come into contact with the school.
And do you feel like that environment is more or not?
Well, at this time in my career, it is. I'm winding down. I had the high excitement. Worked midnights. Did patrol and went through all my phases of, I was a patrolman and then a patrol supervisor. And now, at this time in my life, I can be better suited as a role model and just providing security here in the school.
And of course, school security is very important, especially after what happened yesterday. As you may know, a tragic school shooting occurred in Texas yesterday. Knowing that you are a school resource officer, I'm sure it really affected you because you're around kids these ages all the time. What are your thoughts on what happened yesterday, and how are school resource officers trained for these situations?
We have ongoing training constantly where we're either in classroom settings, um, or we do a lot of online training. And me personally, I've been in several active shooter type classes, and we learned the proper response, how to coordinate our efforts in responding to a threat like this, and a little bit about some of the things that motivate people and the signs we need to look for when we deal with people that are on the campus.
For mental health and just the student's life plays a huge role in that. And after the shooting yesterday, it really affected a lot of people. What did you think about after yesterday? Did you feel like school resource officers, especially where you are at in Florida, do you think you should be more attentive, or what kind of affection did it get from you?
I mean, we've got an email from our supervisor, advising to be heightened awareness, and we had some extra security provided by the county sheriff's office at the school. But for me personally, I take this job fairly seriously. It's not a job you can just sign up for and go through. I have duties, even though it seems like um, I walk around a lot and interact with children, and it seems like I'm playing with the children a lot, but they're used to seeing me around. But as I move around, I make sure that the gates are secure and that the fences are secure and that the people in the front office, that things are proceeding normally and we're not having any kind of abnormal situation.
Of course, I'm sure your job seriously, and so does the other school resource officers. I'm sure you take it to heart. With the kids at school, do you often like talk to them? Do they feel friendly with you?
Yes, the little kids here have they're very friendly and they're very honest with you. They'll tell you anything all the time. And we they come to me with some of their personal problems. They'll tell me their stories, and you have to listen. And there's some times where I've had to go through and talk to teachers and stuff about the kind of things I'm hearing. But other than that, kids really don't, this age, there's no inhibition about talking to a police officer.
That's actually great to hear that they actually appreciate your presence. We need more of that, obviously, with all over the U.S. We need more appreciation of officers. Other than kids at school, do you often communicate with the public in the community?
Well, I deal with a, a lot of the parents because I'll direct traffic in the morning and I'm there at pickup in the afternoon, and I'm familiar with a lot of the parents, and they're very supportive of law enforcement for the most part here in this county. Um, not quite the same in other places I've worked, but where I'm working now, they're very supportive.
Yeah, uh, I also live in Florida, in Central Florida. So I really understand how police appreciation is, I think is to Florida and than other states. That's actually a really great thing. I actually volunteer at one. I'm an explorer at a police department, and I really see how the public really appreciates policing. But down where you are in Florida, when you are in your uniform, how does the public treat you differently versus when you're out of your uniform?
Well, I'm don't deal with the public outside of school much in uniform because I'm here in a school setting. But when I do, like, stop at the grocery store or the pharmacy on my way home, people are cordial. They'll say hello, but I also make uh, an effort that if people look at me, I'll acknowledge them and say hello and wave at them. I always talk to kids, and I'm very, it's pretty well received now. When I'm not in uniform, I'm not a sheriff's deputy anymore, so a lot of people don't know. The people know that I'm retired will talk to me, but other people just go through the crowd unnoticed.
What about when you were a Jacksonville Sheriff Deputy? Was it a lot different from what it was then versus now?
Yes, it was because I was out and about a lot more in public, And it depended on the setting you were in. There were many of the business places, they've always appreciated the extra visibility. Most of the apartment complexes and stuff appreciated the visibility. But then when you get into some of the neighborhoods, people, there are people that want you there and there are people that don't want you there. And, when the people that don't want the police around usually have some other motive for that.
Oh, okay. And in Jacksonville, is the situation different in terms of policing than it is down where you're at in Nassau County?
Yes, Nassau County is well, it's a growing county, but it's a little more rural than Jacksonville. Where Jacksonville, the whole city of Jacksonville is in the entire of Duval County, where Nassau is 4 or 5 small towns spread out in the whole county. I'm in the middle town called Yulee, and it's growing fast, but it's nowhere. They're still a pretty. It's not quite as busy and bustling as Jacksonville, but it's starting to get that way.
Okay. And do you prefer working in that big city environment, or right now do you prefer working in the more rural environment with more kids around and less stress?
Yes, in the less stressful environment. I'm like I said earlier, I'm at the point in my career where I would rather be the role model and be a community um, beacon and not so much of an enforcer anymore.
Okay. And talking and as you're talking about policing in schools and all that, what do you think the public and media misunderstand just about policing in general?
Well, that people don't understand. I mean, most of the time, law enforcement, when we're during our daily routine, most law enforcement officers, they'll have a specific job they do. Traffic officers monitor traffic, patrol officers answer calls for service. But when they're not doing that particular, role, there's things officers work on, and they're responding to people in the community that have complaints about, say, speeders at this intersection or drug dealing in this neighborhood, and the officers will take steps to address that. And people don't understand. We're when they see officers doing things, they're responding to other people's problems, and they're trying to address situations that people are concerned about. And they may think officers are just wasting time, or they're supposed to be out catching bank robbers or something else. And especially when you get stopped for an infraction and the officer writes you a ticket, you may not be happy about it, but the officer's out doing a function that's required.
Yeah, ultimately, police officers are just doing it for everyone's protection, and I'm sure that their jobs rely heavily on that. Uh, don't you do you think that hate media affects this misunderstanding, or what factors do you think contributes to it?
Well, a lot of the misunderstanding, I mean, people don't understand how police handle situations a lot. They'll see movies and TVs where the officers jump out and point guns and beat people up and all this and that. They may see 4 or 5 officers trying to take a person into custody. Well, if I'm going to fight somebody, I can fight and win by hurting them. But if we're trying to take somebody into custody without hurting them, it takes several people because you're restraining your force to restrain somebody, not to beat the life out of them. And when people, they see that, they don't understand, or they don't understand why officers do certain things because, I mean, we have rules on how we have to collect evidence and why we have to talk to witnesses and what information we need when we talk to witnesses. And people get upset because they think the police are trying to do something suspicious when they're just gathering the information they're required to. They're not gonna, an officer's not going to go and gather information he doesn't need to complete his stuff. He's not being nosy. He's just trying to do what's required of him.
Of course. And just talking about how officers and like how much you know about that throughout your career of policing, do you have any example or story of something similar or something related to that?
Well, I've had several times where people have actually interfered in us taking people into custody, and they've jeopardized the case against the person that they're mad at. We had a guy run over his girlfriend with his car because he felt like she was seeing somebody else, and the family and everything was so upset they wanted to take him and exact their own justice, and injuring the officer. When we started to put them in jail, we had near enough a riot because people were upset with how we were doing things, why he wasn't in handcuffs right away, this and that. And it turned into a melee, and where a bunch of people went to jail. If they just let us do it, he was going to jail. It's just he wasn't getting done the way they wanted it done.
And was that in your experience as a Jacksonville deputy?
Yes, it was. I with here at the school, it's been very quiet, thankfully, and we don't have exciting days here at the school. A big day for me is giving high fives.
That's great because I know that schools, anything could happen, honestly. Especially with the news yesterday, I'm pretty sure it put many people under great fear, especially school administrators, even school resource officers across the nation. I'm sure that your school that you're working at has informed you, like you said that you're higher up. And how do you think that school resource officers deal with trying to bond with kids and at the same time try to look out for them?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what we do. We bond with them and we look out for them. We attend meetings with the staff to assess kids that have problems and need attention. Um, I'll go and do welfare checks on children that don't show up to school regularly or that we have a problem with, and we'll monitor their progress throughout the year and stop problems before they start.
And how often do and how often are there kids that are mentally challenged or that you have to do checkups on?
Well, they have specific programs for any kids that have those kind of issues, and they're kept. They have closer monitoring and more staff to help them. The kids that I will deal with or kids that are causing problems in general education classrooms, and then if their attendance, if they're constantly truant or tardy for long amounts of time without excused absences, I'll go do welfare checks and to verify that they still live at the address that they do. Because sometimes people just move and don't officially withdraw kids from school, and it leaves kind of a dark area. We have the kid on our books and they don't re-register at another school, and we have to clear up whether they're enrolled in school or not.
Oh, how the student is and if they're attending or not, right?
Right. And also, if there was any kind of, we'll look for signs of it. Kids with poor attendance will look for signs of abuse or injury or anything like that. And I can coordinate with the sheriff's office and the Department of Children and Families to help follow up if we have anything concerning. I haven't had any of those kind of problems this year, thankfully. So it's been, like I said, a very quiet year for us.
That's great. That it's more of a quiet uh, environment, not many issues with the students. I'm sure many other schools would like that as well. Thank you for obviously being a school resource officer there. I'm sure the kids need it. And going back to just the misunderstanding of policing, it's how do you think or what does defund the police mean to you? And obviously, why shouldn't the police be defunded from your experience?
Well, people that want to defund police, that comes from an anarchy type mindset and movement. Um, they feel like they're the people that feel like you shouldn't spend any money on the government having an army or an air force, that all the money should be funneled back to the community for programs, and everybody should just, you know, tolerate everybody and do all that kind of stuff. And the people that want to set the rules like that, they want to control the police to do the things that they want, not necessarily what's necessary for the community. And by taking money away from the police, they think that there'll be less police conduct that they don't like. And the unintended consequence is there's less police to respond to everybody's problem. And we've seen this in several cities where the they don't respond to burglaries, they don't respond to robberies at stores. There's smash and grabs, there's people stealing cars and robbing cars, and New York pushing people in front of subway trains, and there's no authority around to help keep the order.
Yeah, that's actually a great point that without the police, obviously there won't be any order as recent news shows as well. In where you work at for the school and for the sheriff's office, is the funding there is it welly funded or is there
Well, I mean, the job I'm working in now is they're operating on a reduced budget because their main goal is education, and the education of the students, and security is one of the other duties that are thrown in, like building maintenance and everything else. And the school district has to balance that. So we have the proper equipment we need, we have cars, we have our training we need, we have plenty of the supplies we need when we need them. Could we be paid more? Well, everybody could always be paid more, but I think we're well compensated for what we do.
okay? What about your experiences in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office? Is that a bit different when it comes to the terms of funding?
Yes, for them, if you were to cut funding for a large department, because the majority of the money goes for salaries and retirement benefits, and if you start cutting that, then you have to start reducing people. Um, Also, equipment, computers, people want accountability, so they want everything videotaped. You have to pay for the computer services and computer storage. And under government, record laws, they have to be able to provide that to people in a timely manner under public records requests. So, when they start cutting back funding and still having to do a lot of the required stuff, services suffer. They start having to cut back things like the mounted unit, the water, the the river patrols, the bike units, because our main area would be traffic and police service people, police showing up when you dial 911. And then when you have to take other services away, that puts more load on the officers that are responding for calls. And so less work gets done. People are upset, more people get hurt, more things get taken, and there's less time for the officers to deal with the matters they need to deal with.
Okay, and in Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, has there been any policing, or has it been more steady?
Um, I've not been involved with their budget exactly, but I do not believe that there have been any money taken from the police office. They may not have gotten the money that they wanted, but I don't believe they've cut the funding for the police. And I haven't worked there for 2 years, so what their current state of funding is, I don't know.
Okay. But while you worked there, was it more of like a balanced budget, and like were all the officers provided with the resources they needed?
But we always had the resources we needed, but our feeling and my feeling when I worked there was that we did more with less for a long time. Um, we had a lot of area to police, and we never felt like we had enough officers, but we always managed to get everything done.
Okay, and going to did did that affect your police work or police training, or were all the officers at their best at the time?
Well, I mean, it affects everything like that because when there's not enough officers, you've got to maintain minimum staffing levels, and you can't say, an officer wants to go to a specialized school and you have to have 10 officers and there's only 8 officers, then you can't send somebody to that school because we're already covering for positions we're missing. That's how that hurts. And then you don't always have the timely backup that you need. Officers may be further apart. It may take them 5 or 10 or 20 minutes to get to an officer that needs assistance, even though we're in an area only separated by a couple of miles, depending on traffic and, streets. It's not a straight shot. It may take you a while to get to somebody that needs help. So those are the kind of things that, when things get short staffed, you have officers hurrying through calls. They may miss something, or they may not be able to take time to follow up on leads because the next call is already holding and the officer's already behind for the day.
Oh, well, I don't think that's not such a great thing for the community though, because with with less money being allocated to the policing in the community, it doesn't provide for a better safety and security. I think you'd agree with that. But do you think experience being deputy in that department, do you think that departments like those need more attention?
Well, I mean, they can always, they can always use more money and more manpower. The problem is finding qualified. At my time, it was finding qualified people that were willing to make the sacrifices to become a police officer. Um, they have certain standards. They want you to be of good moral character. They want you to, not have any felony arrests. They want you not to have any drug use. They want you to have good credit so you're not, liable to, take bribes or anything like that. They don't want you in financial straits where you would make questionable decisions. Um, and we were having hard times filling, the needed people because they just didn't meet the qualifications. And now you add on, and recently, the stigma that comes with being a police officer. Several officers have been prosecuted and gone to jail for some of the mistakes or decisions they've made. And some people have decided that it's just not worth the risk and their reputation and their livelihood to take a profession that may or may not, you know, be good for you.
So, okay, so I guess that's different from nowadays because back then you had to find for more qualified officers. As to now, is it a bit more different as to finding officers, or is it like the same type of process?
The same qualifications are in effect, but now on top of not being able to find qualified people that are willing to do the work, there's also the stigma. Why would you want to do it if anything you do, you're automatically going to be assumed that you're guilty or that you're racist or that you've done the wrong thing? Because a lot of people will judge the police strictly by, they group everybody in a big group and they say, well, this police officer was corrupt, they're all corrupt, or this police officer did something he wasn't supposed to, and that's common, and it's not.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, so more common. I don't know why, but it's just more common that blame goes to one specific direct officer, and then now it's the same for every other officer, which isn't true. Like bringing the question, ever since you signed up for your job, is there anything that turned out to be a bit different or anything that didn't meet your expectations?
Well, I thought it would be more exciting all the time. Um, for 5 minutes of excitement, you've got several hours worth of paperwork, and even more sometimes. Um, the work can be dangerous. I've been physically injured several times. Um, car crashes are the most dangerous for most police officers. That's what happens to most police officers more than injuries. Um, taking people into custody is always dangerous, and traffic is horrible for officers. More officers are killed in traffic accidents than by firearms or by other means. And people don't think about that. It's kind of a mundane thing, but we're out on the road all the time driving, and our jobs task us to keep our eyes on several things at once. Most officers have computers in their car, the police radio. They're scanning the area when they're patrolling. They're trying to pay attention to their driving, and then add a cell phone and then whatever personal problems an officer has. You can get your attention divided pretty quickly, and things can be dangerous for you. So those are the kind of things that can happen.
Wow, so that's an interesting fact that officers actually are injured more in car accidents rather than in the line of fire. And as you were policing in Jacksonville or even in the Navy, have you ever had situations where you were in like so much danger that it really met your expectations or not?
Well, and yes, but you don't realize that until it's over, how close you were. I mean, things happened so quickly, and how close you were to death or to grave injury, or the chance you took until it was over with. And you look back and you think, holy cow, what did I just do? And an example of that is one morning on my way to work at 7 in the morning, I drive over 6:30 in the morning. I drive over a large bridge here in Jacksonville, the largest, highest bridge in Jacksonville. And there's two officers stopped on the bridge with a lady standing on the other side of the concrete barrier towards the water. And I had to turn around and come back and stop my car on the other side. And they're both there talking to her, and the three of us had to deal with this girl that wanted to jump off the bridge. And we didn't have time to plan, didn't have time to talk. And between myself and the other two officers, we had her talking. And when she made the move, she had one of the officers asked her, well, can we give your dad his car keys? We want him to be able to get your car. And she said yes, and took the keys out of her pocket and tried to toss them, and the keys fell. Well, when she was distracted with bending over to pick up the keys, I was able to grab her waist. One officer grabbed her arms, and the other officer jumped actually on the other side of the barrier and pushed her back so we could take her into custody and keep her from jumping off the bridge. And
Wow, that
looking back on that, that was nothing. You couldn't do it. You couldn't think about it. You couldn't make up a story like that. But after it happened, you realized, we were 100 feet above the water, and any number of things could have gone wrong. She could have fell. One of the officers could have fell, but we had to act before she hurt herself.
Wow, that is a heroic act that obviously police officers do almost enough recognition for. And I'm sure that's mostly affected by, the image of policing in our current status quo. And in the future, how would you like the image of policing to be changed? What actions should be taken for the change to occur?
Well, one thing that needs to happen is people, the asking why, everybody has to ask why. An officer is dealing with somebody and everybody wants to know why. And I don't know how many fights have started because an officer says, well, we need to have a seat in my police car and we'll discuss things. Why? Well, because, we need to sit down. No, I'm not going to. Well, you don't have a choice. We're going to do this. And people, officers would be happy to talk you to things when they get you into a secure situation that's safe for both people. I've seen any more that people demand to know what's going on and why and not cooperating with police. And many of the current problems that people have had with the police could be avoided if they would just cooperate in the first place and not resist and fight and ask why.
Okay, so it's more of like the questioning of the officers' jobs that really affect how the officer.
Yes, they
I think is what you're trying to say.
right. Right. They people just they they don't have any respect for the officer's authority and think that they do not have to comply and that they have to be told exactly why things are happening the way they are when officers may not have the time or the all the information that they need, but they need to get the situation secured. And that's one of the things I would like to see changed is that people would cooperate a little bit more with the police. We're not out here, the number of people that are actually injured by the police are relatively small. I mean, people they'll say that there are thousands and thousands. There's actually not. It's in the hundreds, and a lot of those incidents turn out that people start resisting when officers have a lawful reason to take them into custody.
Yeah, that's actually a new point that's actually been made on this podcast that people need to be more compliant to the officers. They need to be more passive with the officers of what's going on rather than questioning their jobs. And that's why I think there's more of a social and just environmental difference between police officer and civilians like trust, which is why I have this podcast. Like whoever listens to this podcast knows that the police really do want to do their jobs properly and correctly, but the only way that can happen is if they comply. And,
Right,
before we end this interview, do you have, I'm sorry?
right. And the the thing about that is that, there's these days there everything that police officers do is documented and recorded now. And if people think that they're getting a raw deal or that they're not being treated correctly, fighting the police isn't going to solve their problem. It's only going to escalate their problems and cause more problems. The proper recourse is to go ahead, cooperate with the officer, ask for supervisors, and file complaints. Get your lawyers. The officers are only there to document the situations and detain people to have them before the court. Officers don't hand out punishment. They don't punish people. And if the officers do something wrong, there's recourse for all of that. But it's not something people should take on themselves to do at the scene of an incident. And that's my biggest thing I can put out to people is use the avenues that are available to you. Don't fight and resist an officer. If he's wrong, and you can correct it. And it might mean a trip to jail. It might mean a ticket that you don't think you deserve. But in the end, it'll save a lot of people a lot of heartache because you're not going to get hurt. The officer's not going to get hurt. If you hurt an officer, you can be charged with a felony. And there's no point in having things broken and getting people's feelings hurt over the situation.
Yeah, of course, especially because everything is recorded through body cams now. People have cell phones to record what's going on and obviously upload to social media. I do think, however, when people record and upload to social media, I feel like sometimes they're overreacting as to what the officer is trying to do. And of course, I think that that image needs to be improved by a lot of steps, as in, the public needs to be more compliant with officers, as you said, and just more trust built
Well, and part of that,
citizens and
part of that is,
civilians and officers.
well, the people that don't like anything police do, they're always going to find something negative to say, and they'll take a recording and edit out an hour of the recording and show the 30 seconds that puts the officer in the least favorable light. They won't show the 20
Exactly.
minutes. They won't show the 20 minutes of the officer pleading with the person to comply, or we need to do this, or the officer doesn't want to hurt anybody any more than the officer wants to be hurt. And anymore, like I said earlier, officers don't want to lose their job. They know they're going to be second guessed and micromanaged. And the last resort, and this gets a lot of officers hurt, is that they hesitate and they give people problems when they should go ahead and act and take action and finish the situation quickly and not draw it out.
Exactly, because people just they like you said, they just need to be more compliant of what the officer's job is. They need to understand why the officer is there in the first place. And, just like you said, it just needs to make sense as to the public needing to build a better trust relationship. And yeah, before we, end the interview, do you want to add anything else?
Um, no, I've enjoyed being a police officer. It's it's a it's a calling rather than a job. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are getting into policing, it's a job and not a profession. They don't take the time to learn the ins and outs. They come to work and they go home and they don't care about what they do. And I would like to see more of them care about what they do. And also, officers, people wanting to be police officers, people that are officers, they need to take care of themselves. Um, the stress, the hypervigilance, it takes a toll on people. You need to be able to take time and take care of yourself, whether it's from keeping yourself fit to taking time with your family to taking time to relax. And, it's not about making $1 million by being at work in your car all the time, doing extra work and all that. There's times where you just have to let go and relax and, you know, deal with yourself person, because you're a person, not a police officer all the time.
Of course, officers are also humans. They also have mental health issues that need to be addressed publicly. Sadly, recently I looked on the news, and in the year of, I believe, 2021, there were many officer suicides, which is something that needs to be addressed more in the media, that officers also have awareness and just more attention because their jobs are so stressful, and the public that disagree with their jobs make it just a lot harder for them.
Well, and the stress comes from both sides. For officers, stress. Their bosses create stress on officers. The public creates stress on officers. And then officers that, they start to feel like they're being second guessed and that they make the wrong decisions or that they've done things, and in their perception they're not living up to their standards. And like you said, we need to be aware of people's mental health.
Thank you for contributing to this podcast episode. It was actually really great talking to you about these problems, especially because some of them haven't been brought up before in my other interviews. So thank you again.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you, and talk to me anytime you need.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode, and stay tuned for more.